Hey YouTubers, got another review today. A common comment, piece of feedback I've gotten on a lot of my older lens videos or gear videos where it's made apparent that I shoot on a red or for a short period when I had two reds because we won one. And then I would be talking about photography lenses and how expensive cinema lenses are. People would call me out for having a red, shooting with a red, but not investing in high-end glass. That's, I've talked about that a little bit where I don't think, I think I still think the camera is more important than the lens as far as where your money goes. The cameras do evolve faster than lenses, so I understand the argument towards if you have to make an investment or one or the other, that nice glass is a better long-term investment. That's certainly true. But I think, in the moment, any given day, if you can invest in your camera, that's going to have more of a direct impact on your final image than your lenses. So that being said, I have used cinema lenses. I've talked about this before. We shot our movie The Paranormals on like a $7,000. We didn't buy it. We rented it. A Schneider Cinema Xenar 25mm lens. It was a great lens, and I could tell a definite difference between that and everything else I shot with, my standard lenses. Probably 15% of the movie we had to shoot on some other lenses. I can tell in the edit, cutting back and forth, it's just better contrast, better color, the stuff you expect, a little sharper. It just has a different feel to it. As I would hope, because it was a $7,000 lens, so it better have some sort of tangible difference. Again, but those tangible differences, they probably do have, they probably subconsciously have an effect on an audience. There's just this feeling that, it's hard to describe, that it feels higher quality, the image does. But it's not as, I don't think it's as drastic as like jumping from like a, like a Sony A7 to a red or something. There's a more tangible difference there. As you can see, I actually have two cinema lenses here for the first time in a while. First time I've ever owned any cinema lenses. In addition to that Cinema Xenar, I've also shot with Xene lenses before. Obviously, I've shot with a lot of Sigma Art series lenses, which are similar to the Sigma Cine lenses in terms of image quality. But this is the first time I've ever owned a cinema lens. So what I have here is the Tokina Cinema ATX zoom. There are two zooms, two main zooms. This is a 16 to 28mm T3 and a 50 to 135mm T3. T3 is pretty much equivalent to an F2.8, which is pretty standard, pretty good for a zoom lens, with the exception of those Sigma zooms, which are now also Cine zooms that do the T2, because they're like F1.8. But we'll talk a little bit about differences between those, what I like about these. I've had this 16 to 28mm for about a month, and I've had this 50 to 135 for less than a day. Came in today. I was kind of testing the waters of this guy, decided I really, really, really liked it, and pulled the trigger on this guy. Both these lenses came out in great. Now I don't remember. It's either 2015 or 2016. They've been on the market for a little while, longer than a lot of in the last year, a lot of cinema lenses have come out in kind of the lower spectrum where they're quote unquote affordable. These have kind of been on the market for a while and not really, I don't guess they made a very big splash. They don't seem to be very commonly used lenses or often overlooked lenses. Now Tokina now has a Cinema Vista Prime series, which is very popular. I see a lot of high-end shooters that shoot on the VistaVision Red cameras using them because they're full frame and super sharp and fancy. This 16 to 28 is supposed to be full frame, and this one is not. They're not very clearly labeled online, but they appear The image circle does appear to be a little bigger on the zoom. And also, they have since updated this 16 to 28 to a version 2 that has a body that more closely resembles the Cinema Vista lenses. So it wouldn't be uncommon to see somebody shooting with the Cinema Vista primes and also have the new version of the 16 to 28 millimeter that kind of match. It's more of a, doesn't have the red stripe. It's a little higher end looking, a little simpler design. And as a consequence of that, these lenses are on sale drastically right now. The 16 to 28 millimeter was great. Here, I forget my numbers again. It was a little over 2,000, I think. 2,200 maybe, maybe 2,500, somewhere in there, somewhere in the low to mid $2,000. And then this 50 to 135 is a little more. It was 3,300. Still very, very pricey for lenses, but cheap for cinema lenses. Cheaper than the Sigma Cine zooms, cheaper than most Cine primes. For example, the Tokina Vista primes, like just one of those primes is like $5,000. So I got both of these for basically the cost of one of their primes. I think these get overlooked because I think people probably favor the Sigma Cine zooms because they're faster. That doesn't necessarily mean they're better. Again, I haven't specifically used the Cine versions of those lenses, but I have in the past owned the Art series versions of those lenses and used them quite a bit. The 50 to 100 was notorious for breathing. The 18 to 35 at 18 millimeter for me didn't cover my 6K weapon. It may now cover the 8K helium. I haven't never tried it on that sensor, but I didn't like that at full frame it didn't cover the whole sensor. So those are my kind of two reasons why I ended up selling those lenses. But let me get into these. So what do I like about these? Obviously, anybody that's used a cinema lens, the heftiness inside, like when you put this on your camera, it suddenly transfers. I mean, a Red camera already looks like a serious camera, but with a cinema lens on, it's even more of a serious camera. And then you put like a matte box on that, and it's like you're in full production mode. There is something, I know it sounds sort of maybe vapid or something, but there is something about having a cinema lens on your camera that just instantly, you know, maybe it's like 5% more in your brain that you're like, okay, we're doing something real, we gotta take this, go that extra distance or whatever. And I think people around the camera take it more seriously too. That doesn't really matter, but it is, I think, worth noting. I think there is just something about the serious look of them that is something intangible and I think somewhat valuable. It just puts you in a certain state of mind. If you've seen my Rokinon reviews, I talk in depth about how much I like manual lenses and how that's really the reason to get those, is there's nothing at those price points that gives you full manual aperturing and manual focus gears. I have since selling my Rokinons like 2 years ago. I've not had any manual lenses since. I do have the Rokinon SPs, which are manual focus, but they don't have an aperture ring. When I got this 16 to 28 and I had the manual rings again, I realized how much I've missed those. It really is just a joy to use an aperture ring and get those smooth transitions, as well as the long focus throw. I'm not sure what the degree on this is. I would say it's not quite a 180 degree turn, but it's a pretty good turn for the focus. What I will say is a surprise joy about these two lenses. In the box is this little blue metal pin. I'm sure some professional cinematographers will have like a specific name for this. I feel like I've encountered one years ago, like 10 years ago on like a random like weird Panasonic, and haven't since. Maybe a couple follow focus systems I've seen where it like sticks out something to focus this way. But this little pin, there's a bunch of little holes drilled around the focus ring and the zoom ring, and you can kind of pick the spot you want and just like hand screw that in wherever you want. And it gives you a really nice lever for focusing or zooming. I've I've oddly like fallen in love with it. It's such a simple thing. And I would recommend Rokinon looking into adding this to their DS lenses. This is a really cool feature because follow focus is, I have a follow focus. I've got a wooden camera one. It works fine. I've never, there are situations where you need them, where you need marks for really specific high-end shots. But for like run and gun stuff, I've always been a hand focuser. And that, of course, gets a little harder. I mean, it's hard with photo lenses because it's such a small area, and it's hard with like cinema lenses that have a really long focus because the hand motion's so far. And this little lever is like the perfect ergonomic option for adjusting focus or zoom to me. Like, I love it. I've been using it mainly on the focus ring on the wide zoom. It's just like there's something intuitive. If you're holding your camera, it's hard for me to illustrate this. I guess I can hold it this way. You know, if you're holding your camera, I'd normally be on this side, but you know, you're getting your shot, and you're lining it up or whatever. There's something. The hand motion of this is way more intuitive, or even just like with one finger, just up and down. Like you can do the focus ring goes a little further. Let me just plug it in the right way. So for me, it would be on the left side of the lens if I'm behind the camera. So I'm doing a focus pull on something, like this motion right here is so nice for like getting a real precise and smooth, uninterrupted moment. This is a lot easier, more precise to me than this forward or backward motion of a focus wheel if you're a single camera operator. Now, if you think about it, the purpose of focus wheel is mainly for a focus assistant, and they're going to be facing this way most likely. So for them, it's that same side-to-side motion, which makes sense. That motion makes a lot less sense when you're a single camera operator and pull and focus this way, because just the range of motion of your wrist can't rotate very far that way, but you can go all the way around a lens fairly easily depending on how obtrusive your rig is. So I've just found this to be my new favorite way to focus. It's like I can just hit a precise point so easily, and you got that nice long throw, and there's a nice resistance to the ring on here that is enjoyable to use. So it's a real subtle little thing that just happened to be on these lenses I wasn't expecting. It's actually become one of my favorite features of them. It sounds kind of silly, but there's just something really nice about that motion. So props to Tokina for including those little holes. I also think the new revised version of this lens, I don't think has the holes. They tried to make it look more premium looking, so there's just less noise on the body, and I think they removed those little holes. Also, I'm not sure there's necessarily anything different between this lens and the new version of this lens. I think it's just an updated body to match the Vista Primes. Probably one of those situations where they're like, it's got a new coating. If you look at the marketing, these are both marketed for 4K. It says 4K ready on the box on both of them. That's because these came out in 2016 or whatever. 8K wasn't really on the market yet. Now the updated version of this is like 8K ready. I doubt the glass is really all that different. And I've been shooting with this, and the images I've been getting out are some of the sharpest of any lenses I've used. It looks phenomenal. Again, maybe there's some coating difference there, but it's not like, oh, I got an 8K camera, I better not get the 4K lenses. Those aren't going to work. I think right now this is a great value. I mean, the new version's like, I think like $4,500. It's like another $2,000 for the updated look or whatever, and you lose my little pinhole turning thing, a little lever. I love this little focus lever. And where I use that mostly for focus on the wide zoom, because it doesn't zoom all that far. I'm planning to, and I've already tested, using this on the zoom ring on the 50 to 135. So if you've ever wanted to do long kind of cinematic zooms, if you've ever like watched a TV show that does like a nice like maybe it's a little bit of a tripod pan and a zoom in on a subject, I'll cut to my little example shot of that. That's a great move, camera move that's really actually hard to do, because Because with photography lenses, typically they aren't parfocal, which means you can set the focus at 50 millimeter and zoom in, and at 135 millimeter it'll still be in focus. Both of these lenses are parfocal. So that means whenever I do a shot like that, I can be controlling the tripod and the zoom, each with a separate hand, and not have to worry about focus, which is really nice. So you don't have to worry about one wheel at a time, basically, out of the 3 wheels on here. That's a cool shot, and you don't always think that's a particularly tricky shot, but I can't tell you the number of times I've run into people that suggest a zoom shot, and I have to explain, oh, well, in manual cinematography, there's not really zooms unless you have a specialty lens for that. I can't really zoom very well with my 70-200 photo lens. Not for a nice smooth zoom, because I got to do focus and zoom at the same time on a photography lens. That's really hard to do. So typically, I explain to people, well, you're either talking about physically moving the camera in space, like a slider, or you can do a slider and focus at the same time, or you have to do a gimbal shot or something to physically move the camera closer to the subject rather than zoom. Now with this lens on a tripod, I can do a similar effect as a single operator, set my focus, do my zoom, and get a really nice zoom shot. So I'm excited about that, being able to do that with the 50 to 135. And the reason I would choose this over the Sigma 50 to 100 is the obvious thing. It got the extra 135 millimeter focal length out of this one. So it's one more lens in the range there. So it's a little bit of a longer zoom. And also the 50 to 100 is notorious for its focus breathing. I'm not, in the quick testing I did this afternoon, I haven't really detected any focus breathing. I'll show you the sample shots. But as far as I can tell, both these lenses are super sharp, completely parfocal, and really nice smooth action on the focus and the zoom rings. They're T3. To some people that seems slow, but for a zoom it's really not. I mean, that's pretty great. And if you try to look at the competitive landscape of Cine zoom lenses, the Sigmas are really the only thing close to these. There is a what's the company? Fujinon zoom. I'm gonna put the text up in case I get that wrong. That's a 50 to 135 T3 as well, but it's only available in Sony E-mount. These are available in both PL and EF, and maybe some more. And then next month they're also coming out with an 11 to 20 millimeter T2.9, which is just a touch faster than these two. But 11 to 20 is a great wide zoom option that's even wider than the 16. There's been a couple instances. I've still got my 14 millimeter Rokinon SP. There's a couple instances where the 16 on here wasn't quite wide enough and I had to switch to the 14. But I'm thinking about getting that 11 to 20 as well, and that'll knock everything else out of the water as far as wide angle goes. The only downside is it overlaps with most of this lens. Goes to 20, this goes 28, but they're pretty close. And there's still a gap of 28 to 50 between these. It's not covered, so I need a good 35 in here. I almost wish there was Sigma makes the 24 to 35, which I'm a big fan of the still version of, and they have a cine version of that. If it wasn't $4,000 by itself, I'd consider that in between and maybe sell this guy and get the 11 to 20, then have a full range. But I think I'll just wait and see what Tokina comes up with. I am holding on to my Rokinon SP primes since they're like f1.2 in the instances where I need a really shallow depth of field or a really super low light situation. I can still use those lenses to supplement these, but these zooms are amazing. I love them. I know people want to know, like, what's the flaring like? What's the chromatic aberration like? I never really care about those things that much. I go more from my gut reaction from them. I have used this one in the field a number of times. It's just the images I get, I can tell even just on the monitor, which isn't always the best way to tell, but there's just something that pops from them. I can tell they're sharper because my focus assist just feels a little like it's going crazier than my normally on my normal lens. There's just something like, oh man, that's sharp. You can really see it. So I don't know. My gut reaction using these, they're a thrill to use. They're really, I love going back to the manual rings. Yes, you can get that with Rokinon DS lenses. These are heavier, and I feel like the ring action's got a little more resistance than the DS's. I don't have those right next to me, and I can't remember kind of what the action was, but these feel a little more resistance, which gives it a little more of a high-end feel. Again, I don't think it's the most resistance I've ever felt on a lens, but they feel good to me. And I love these little levers, and I love that you can just move the rod where you want it for whatever purpose. So yeah, I'll keep it simple. These are two kind of overlooked older lenses. They're on pretty significant sale right now. I wouldn't be surprised if Tokina updates this lens just like they've already updated this lens. I'm perfectly happy with these older ones, even on an 8K camera. So I don't see any problem using these on any modern camera today. I really like them. I'm going to use them a lot. I've even got like a short film. We've got 2 short films working on the next 2 months, 3 months, I guess. And I've already had a number of zoom shots that I've had in mind and that I'm excited to be able to actually pull off with this lens. So I like them. I wish more people used them. Like, I've YouTubed about them. It's part of my impetus for anytime I do a review. It's like, well, is everybody else already doing it? And nobody's really talking about these lenses. There's a couple of things out there, but I wanted to put my 2 cents in about them. I'll also, on a side note, the B-roll shots of the camera itself with the lenses on it were shot with my new Red Hydrogen 1 cellular phone or media machine. I am part of the Houdini program. We're the pre-release beta people. These are going public on November 2nd. I will eventually do a video about this. I've had it for about 3 weeks now. I'll do a review once it goes public. We're not allowed to review them yet. But we are allowed to take pictures and take videos. So those B-roll shots I did shoot with this in manual mode in H.265, which is adjustable. You can do 6.4 or 6.5. And yeah, so stay tuned for that. And check out these. If you're on the fence about these, I wouldn't worry about them. I was a little nervous just because not a lot of people are using them. I didn't understand why they weren't more popular. Their Vista Primes are super popular, so I'm thinking, what's wrong with these? And I don't think there's anything wrong with them. And they're super cheap right now, so you can actually, if you got a sub $5,000 lens budget, which is a lot for a lot of people, but for cinema lenses, that's really good. You can get 2 lenses that really cover a pretty wide range of focal lengths. So I recommend them. I like them. I can't wait to use them more. They're the most fun lenses in my kit right now to use. A lot of my other lenses still look great. I'm shooting on my Sigma 24-70. It still looks great. It's just those still lenses, when you're focusing, it's just not as confident and not as fun. These you really feel like you're getting the shot when you're using them. So I wholeheartedly recommend them. Thanks for watching. Have any questions, leave a comment. Subscribe. Don't subscribe. That joke's getting old because I say it every time. Anyway, see you guys next time.